This is Nightline, and I'm Sabrina Zainal. The top stories. Develop measures to implement targeted subsidies, Prime Minister tells agencies. And government has no plans to review SOSMA, says Home Minister. Good morning. We begin with this story. Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim on Tuesday instructed all government departments to formulate and develop suitable measures to implement targeted subsidies by taking into consideration the interests of the consumers and the industries. In a statement issued after chairing the National Action Council on Cost of Living (NACOL) meeting on Tuesday, the Prime Minister said Malaysia must channel bulk subsidies, which also benefit the super-rich and conglomerates, towards supporting the B40, M40 and small business owners who are particularly affected by the rising cost of living. He cited an example of Tenaga Nasional Berhad, TNB, of having almost 10 million consumers, but 10% or 1 million of the consumers are the conglomerates who enjoy more than 50% in electricity subsidy. Hence, he wants government departments to formulate and develop suitable measures to implement targeted subsidies by taking into consideration the interests of the consumers and the industries and ensure smooth and effective implementation of the measures. The NACOL meeting at Perdana Putra was also attended by the two Deputy Prime Ministers, Datuk Seri Ahmad Zahid Hamidi and Datuk Seri Fadilah Yusof. On November 27th, the Prime Minister instructed NACOL to analyse and go through the subsidy implications within 2 weeks. He said that the subsidies borne by the government, including the electricity bill subsidy, are currently being enjoyed by all groups, even though they are actually for the poor. Datuk Seri Anwar, who is also the finance minister, said 3 reports were tabled at Tuesday's meeting, which covered the common issues, objections and strategies by the Ministries of Domestic Trade and Cost of Living, Natural Resources, Environment and Climate Change, as well as plantation and commodities. Datuk Seri Anwar said the government is also consistent in developing and supporting sustainable industrial development, where the country's livestock sector has long reached a sustainable level to meet local demand and is also able to export its products. The NACOL meeting has discussed this matter at length, and some measures have been recommended. The matters will be tabled to Cabinet for consideration on Wednesday. Earlier, Datuk Seri Anwar and his Canadian counterpart, Justin Trudeau, discussed the potential for new cooperation between Malaysia and Canada in several fields, including in the education and energy sectors. This was among the matters discussed when the Canadian Prime Minister made a telephone call to Datuk Seri Anwar to congratulate him on his appointment as the 10th Prime Minister of Malaysia.
Hello, Prime Minister.
Prime Minister Trudeau, Anwar here.
What a pleasure to speak with you, Anwar. Please call me Justin. I wanted to congratulate you on a very complex victory, but very, very happy to see a strong voice in place for Malaysia.
Thank you, Justin. I appreciate, we have been long-standing, and I must express through you my profound gratitude.
Malaysia and Canada have been strengthening their bilateral cooperation since they established diplomatic ties in 1957, with two-way trade hitting 10.58 billion ringgit in 2021. Canadian investments in Malaysia's manufacturing sector in the past 40 years were worth 789 million ringgit. During the call, Trudeau expressed interest in enhancing bilateral relations and conveyed his gratitude to Malaysia for its support over the years.
We value your experience, and I think you may, of course, be able to contribute not only in terms of democratic accountability, strengthening the institutions, but also focus on trade and investments into Malaysia.
That is exactly what I want to see us doing. So I'll make sure to let all my relevant ministers and officials know as well about this opportunity, because quite frankly, your political perspective, your views, the broad coalition you've been able to pull together, I think there are many, many values on which we align deeply and could work together very well.
The government will not be reviewing the Security Offences Special Measures SOSMA Act 2012. In confirming the matter, Home Minister Datuk Seri Saifuddin Nasution Ismail said this is because the law allows the court process to take place and was in contrast to the now defunct Internal Security Act ISA, which allowed for detention without trial, and the Emergency Ordinances EO, which allowed for detention of up to 60 days. Datuk Seri Saifuddin said SOSMA was often compared with other preventative laws, even though SOSMA is not a preventative provision.
Pada masa sekarang, proses itu semuanya dipatuhi, ya, dan ada juga yang SOSMA yang ditangkap kemudian dilepaskan pun ada, ya, ataupun diadili di mahkamah kemudian mereka menang melalui khidmat peguam pun ada. Tapi asas tindakannya adalah asas kepada menjaga keselamatan dan ketenteraman awam kerana berasaskan kepada risikan bukti yang diperolehi, ianya mewajarkan satu tangkapan itu dibuat.
He added that at the end of the 28 days, there will only be 2 recommendations for the detainee under SOSMA, which is either to charge them in court or to free them. On another matter, Datuk Seri Saifuddin said the government has approved an allocation of 30 million ringgit for the procurement of body cameras for use by members of the police.
I was made to understand by the KSU that the budget of 20 million has been approved. Now it's in the process of procurement. Hopefully there is no problem, and eventually we'll get the body cam.
Speaking during a media conference after a working visit to Bukit Aman on Tuesday, Datuk Seri Saifuddin said the body cameras have been deemed a necessity, but added that its acquisition will follow the due procurement process. Moving on, temporary evacuation centres to accommodate flood victims will be activated earlier in areas more at risk of the disaster. Deputy Prime Minister Datuk Seri Ahmad Zahid Hamidi said the proactive measures are part of the government's efforts to avoid loss of life, damage to property, as well as loss of important documents.
Di mana saya telah mengarahkan bahawa agensi pusat mesti melayani sama rata kerajaan-kerajaan negeri yang belum bersama dengan kerajaan persekutuan. Artinya, kesaksamaan, keadilan mesti dilakukan tanpa mengira negeri itu diperintah oleh pihak mana. Ini adalah bagi menyelesaikan masalah rakyat, bukan menyelesaikan masalah politik.
He said the matter was decided during the National Disaster Management NADMA committee meeting, which he chaired in Putrajaya on Tuesday. The meeting also established that preparedness measures must be proactive rather than reactive based on the forecasts by the Malaysian Meteorological Department, Met Malaysia, in addition to focusing on areas with high rainfall. It also expressed commitment that any assistance to flood victims that had been given by the previous administration would be continued. In addition, the government will also look into long-term solutions to prevent floods in the future, especially in providing holistic flood mitigation solutions, even as the move is expected to involve large allocations and planning up until the year 2100. Meanwhile, residents in flood-affected areas are advised to relocate immediately to relief centres as soon as authorities issue a directive. Minister in the Prime Minister's Department for Sabah, Sarawak Affairs and Special Functions, Dato' Armizan Muhammad Ali, said the directive will be issued after taking into consideration the safety of residents in order to avoid any untoward incidents, besides there being provisions in the law that require residents to evacuate if so instructed. Dato' Armizan reminded the people to be more alert to the possibility of floods, especially as the Malaysian Meteorological Department expects between 4 to 6 monsoon episodes up until February next year. The significant monsoon episodes may bring continuous heavy rain, strong winds and rough sea conditions.
Baru melepasi luruhan yang pertama. Dijangka akan ada 3 ke 5 kali lagi, 4 hingga 6 sepanjang MTL pada tahun ini.
He was met by the media after inspecting the temporary relief center at Sekolah Menengah Kebangsaan Seri Semantan in Mentakap, Pahang, which has been opened since Thursday. He added that the Malaysian Civil Defence Force, APM, as the Secretariat for the Disaster Management Committee at the state and district levels, has the authority to enforce the evacuation of residents. And although action can be taken on residents who do not obey the evacuation order, at this stage, authorities are focusing on awareness so that the community understands the order has been issued, taking into account the safety of flood victims. Datuk Seri Muhammad Shafiq Abdullah, whose services as Public Service Department Director General were terminated effective Monday, will seek legal action against those involved in the action to remove him from office. In a statement issued to the media on Tuesday, Datuk Seri Muhammad Shafiq said he was dissatisfied and aggrieved by the government's decision. Datuk Seri Muhammad Shafiq said he received the letter regarding the termination of his services, which went viral and spread on social media on Monday, even though the letter was dated December 1st. He said he was never given any reasonable notice following the effective date of the termination of his services being the same day that he received the said letter. He also denied allegations that he had threatened officers, claiming instead that there were efforts to prevent him from carrying out his duties efficiently. Earlier on Tuesday, Chief Secretary to the Government Tan Sri Muhammad Zuki Ali said in a press statement that Datuk Sri Muhammad Shafiq's termination of service was done in accordance with Regulation 49(3) of the Public Officers Conduct and Discipline Regulations 1993. He added that Datuk Sri Muhammad Shafiq's retirement was in accordance with subsection 10(5)(d) of the Pensions Act 1980, which enabled him to enjoy all retirement benefits to which he was entitled to. Tan Sri Muhammad Zuki said the decision was made after they went through the procedures for termination for the public interest, and it had been examined by the Attorney General's chambers. Tan Sri Muhammad Zuki, on behalf of the government, also expressed his deepest appreciation and gratitude to Datuk Sri Muhammad Shafiq for his service and devotion to the country as a civil servant. In August this year, the 58-year-old Datuk Sri Muhammad Shafiq was alleged to have uttered abusive words against an immigration officer at the Kuala Lumpur International Airport in an incident which went viral on social media. The Road Transport Department, JPJ, has arrested 19 suspects in its latest sweep on illegal taxi operators at airports. JPJ Director General Dato' Zailani Hashim said their investigations revealed that these operators charge between 80 and 150 ringgit for a ride from Kuala Lumpur International Airport, KLIA, to the Kuala Lumpur City Centre.
Charge yang mereka kenakan dalam lingkungan 80 hingga 150 one way ke Kuala Lumpur. Ke Kuala Lumpur saja. Kalau luar daripada itu makin tinggi. Yang mana charge biasanya hanyalah di sekitar RM65 hingga RM80 saja.
He said the operation was carried out at KLIA and KLIA-2 from December 4th to 12th, involving 14 personnel, including several who went undercover and were approached by illegal taxi operators. Of the 19 arrested, 15 used personal vehicles, while 4 others used public service vehicles. He added that 3 of them were repeat offenders. Authorities seized 19 vehicles, including 7 MPVs comprising 3 taxis and 4 privately owned vehicles. Those arrested will be charged under Section 205(1) of the Land Public Transport Act, which carries a maximum 50,000 ringgit fine, 5 years jail, or both upon conviction. India accuses China of trying to change status quo. News from the foreign front when we return. continues. India on Tuesday has accused China of trying to unilaterally change the status quo on their disputed Himalayan border after clashes which left troops on both sides injured last week. India's Defence Minister Rajnath Singh said China's People's Liberation Army attempted to unilaterally change the status quo by encroaching on the line of actual control in the Yangtze area of Tawang sector on December 9th. The minister claimed that the face-off, which followed recent joint U.S.-India military exercises near the border, had angered Beijing. The line of actual control is the de facto border separating Chinese and Indian-held territories from Ladakh in the west to India's eastern state of Arunachal Pradesh, which China claims in its entirety. China, in the meantime, said the situation was now calm, calling on India to uphold the peace and tranquility of the China-India border region. Railways across the United Kingdom were facing major disruption on Tuesday as thousands of rail workers begin a series of strikes, forcing millions to work from home and causing chaos for those attempting to travel. The latest round of strikes come as the UK is experiencing a wave of industrial action on a scale not seen since the 1980s, fueled by energy and food price hikes. Nurses, postal workers, and border force officials were among those striking, demanding better pay and working conditions, with thousands of members of the National Union of Rail, Maritime and Transport Workers walking out on train companies across the country. The unions were holding out for steeper pay hikes after UK inflation exceeded 11%. It was understood that the strikes will be held over two 48-hour periods this week, from Tuesday to Wednesday and from Friday to Saturday. Previously, the government had urged unions to call off planned strikes that will hit healthcare and mail delivery over the Christmas period. International arrivals in Hong Kong from Wednesday will no longer face COVID-19 movement controls or be barred from certain venues as the government scrapped a mandatory COVID-19 mobile application in the country. Chief Executive John Lee on Tuesday said travelers and all residents coming from overseas will be allowed into all locales provided they test negative for COVID-19 on arrival. They will still need to show a paper record of their COVID-19 vaccines at some venues which require it, but arrivals face no restrictions on moving around. In the meantime, the national virus application that had tracked people's movements during the pandemic went offline at the end of Monday, potentially reducing the likelihood of people being forced into quarantine for visiting COVID-19 hotspots. independent mixed doubles duo Tan Kian Meng Lai Peijing reached a career-high world number 6 on Tuesday, and they are dreaming big. Since leaving the national team last year, both Kian Meng Peijing have come a long way and are now Malaysia's best prospects in mixed doubles to qualify for the 2024 Paris Olympics. Peijing attributed the pair's success to strong determination and a never-say-die attitude. She also paid tribute to her outgoing coach, Chin A. Hui, who has journeyed with the independent doubles players over the last 2 years. The former national mixed doubles head coach will head to New Zealand to take up a coaching role and will be replaced by another former BAM coach, Rosman Razak. Kian Meng Peijing will resume training this week before the start of next season, kicking it off with the Super 1000 Malaysia Open on January 10th to the 15th. Former top football players such as Brazil's Roberto Carlos, Cafu, Portugal's Nuno Gomes, Italian Del Piero, Marco Materazzi and others took to the pitch during a World Cup encounter in Qatar, but this time no trophies were at stake, just fun. The so-called FIFA legends took part in a friendly match with Qatar-based workers in the Al Tumama Stadium. Even FIFA President Gianni Infantino took on a new role as he dressed up as a referee and distributed yellow cards. It was a side event of the World Cup ahead of the upcoming semi-finals that will see Argentina face Croatia and France against the surprise of the tournament, Morocco. Qatar came under heavy international pressure to introduce labor reforms in recent years as it sought to build new World Cup stadiums in record time, often using migrant workers who toiled for long hours under harsh conditions. Woman seriously injured in a gas cylinder explosion. This and more after this short break. Welcome back. The Kuala Selangor Municipal Council, MPKS, said the funfair operator at Eco Grandeur, which was the scene of an accident on Monday night, had been issued a warning to stop operations, followed by a confiscation order last month. Its president, Rahila Rahmat, said the funfair operator's permit application was rejected due to several reasons, but they continue to operate illegally. Rahila said the funfair had been sealed on November 29th this year for failing to obtain a license, but had continued operating. She also said that the funfair operator did not have police permit, as well as the approval by the Selangor Occupational Health and Safety Department. The case is being investigated under the Selangor Entertainment and Places of Entertainment Enactment 1995 for operating without a license. An immediate stop order and notice have also been issued to the operator. On Monday night, 2 women and a child were injured after falling from a ride known as the Sotong Ride at the amusement park. The identities of the victims had not been ascertained, but they have been discharged from the Shah Alam Hospital. In Pulau Pinang, a woman sustained burns almost all over her body after a liquefied petroleum gas LPG tank exploded in her home in Taman Sena Permai, Pokok Sena on Tuesday. In the 8 a.m. incident, 26-year-old Siti Hajar Hanis Muhammad had turned on the gas to cook when it exploded, which resulted in the double-story terrace house to be badly damaged. Tasik Galugor Fire and Rescue Station Operations Commander Muhammad Hazam Hassan said they received an emergency call at 8:13 a.m. Upon arrival, the team found a woman with burns being taken out of the house by a neighbor. The victim was sent to the Kepala Batas Hospital for treatment and was found to have suffered more than 69% burns on her body. The cause and estimated losses are still under investigation. In Terengganu, the body of a 3-year-old child who fell off a canal bridge in Kampung Kebor Besar in Manir on December 12th was recovered on Tuesday. State Fire and Rescue Department Chief Operations Commander Mazimi Muhammad said Muhammad Sufi Ijaz, Muhammad Sobri's remains were found about 500 meters from the location of the incident. During the incident, the victim and his brother had gone to the area to watch other children swimming when he was believed to have fallen into the canal. His father's immediate efforts to search for him proved futile, and search and rescue SAR operations went on overnight. The body of the victim was sent to the Sultanah Nur Zahira Hospital for further action. In a separate incident, the body of a former imam who fell into a prawn cultivation pond in Kampung Fikri in Situ on Monday was also recovered by the SAR team. 72-year-old Zakaria Matnong's remains were found about 1.7 kilometers from the spot where he fell. The victim was reported to have slipped from the banks at 7 p.m. before villagers who witnessed the incident alerted the authorities. Nightline this time around, let's take a look at these elephants in Thailand having a World Cup moment of their own by putting their football skills to the test against local school children. With that, I'm Sabrina Zainal. Thank you for watching and stay safe, Malaysia.